Okay, so you're probably glued to the TV tonight, right? Watching those U.S. election results roll in.
Yeah, definitely a nail biter.
For sure. It feels like the whole world is watching.
It kind of is.
Well, we're right there with ya, trying to sift through all the noise and really get to the most interesting stuff happening tonight.
Yeah, and we're going to look at it from a different angle.
Okay, I like that.
Through the lens of Al Jazeera's live election blog.
I love that.
It's a non-U.S. perspective on this very American event.
Ooh, that's got to be interesting. So give us the lay of the land. What's the overall scene looking like right now?
Well, it's a close race, for sure. We're seeing several states called for each candidate, but no clear winner yet. And as expected, all eyes are on those battleground states.
Of course. Each one could totally tip the scales.
Exactly.
And speaking of battleground states, Al Jazeera is reporting that North Carolina just went to Trump.
Wow.
That was the first battleground date to be called, and it's a big one.
Huge. Yeah, that's significant because North Carolina has only flipped blue twice since 1968. It was a key target for the Democrats. So this early victory for Trump really sets the stage for a tight race. And it raises the bigger question, is the East Coast becoming redder?
Whoa, you're
Yeah.
right. Al Jazeera's analyst Steve Clemons from The Hill even pointed out that we're seeing this trend in places like the suburbs of Washington, D.C. and Virginia,
Right.
which usually lean Democrat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It's definitely something to watch.
It really is. Makes you wonder if there are other unexpected shifts happening with voter demographics.
Well, there are. The AP Votecast data is showing some interesting results. For example, Trump's support has actually increased among some demographics that typically vote Democrat. Young people aged 18, 29, black people, particularly black men and Latinos.
Wow, that's surprising.
Well,
Why do you think that's happening?
It's tough to say for sure at this point, but it could be a combination of factors. Maybe economic anxiety is playing a role, or maybe there are cultural issues driving some voters away from the Democrats. It could also be a sign of dissatisfaction with the direction of the Democratic Party. It's definitely something for political analysts to dig into.
Absolutely. You also mentioned something about prediction markets favoring Trump.
Oh, yeah.
So, first off, what are prediction markets exactly? And should we read into this?
Well, prediction markets are platforms where people can basically bet on the outcome of events,
Okay.
including elections. The idea is that the collective wisdom of the crowd reflected in these bets can often predict outcomes more accurately than traditional polls.
Interesting.
So while it's still early, this does suggest a potential advantage for Trump.
Okay, so we've got a close race, possible demographic shifts and prediction markets leaning towards Trump. This is getting really interesting.
Yeah.
But as we all know, it all comes down to those key battleground states. Let's zoom in on Pennsylvania, which seems to be the big one this time around.
Absolutely. Pennsylvania, with its 19 electoral votes, is crucial. It's being called ground zero by strategists for a reason.
Yeah.
And historically, it's been a swing state going for Biden in 2020. But for Trump in 2016, every vote in Pennsylvania truly matters.
Al Jazeera is reporting that it's incredibly tight there. You can practically feel the tension radiating from every vote count update. I wonder if there are specific areas within Pennsylvania that will be particularly decisive.
Oh, for sure. Keep an eye on counties like Philadelphia and Allegheny County, which tend to lean Democrat, and more rural counties that are typically Republican strongholds. The outcome in Pennsylvania really hinges on which way these key areas swing.
Okay, so we've got North Carolina in the Trump column, and Pennsylvania is shaping up to be a nail-biter. What other battleground states should we be watching?
Well, Georgia's another one that's too close to call right now. High voter turnout there, which usually benefits Democrats, but hasn't guaranteed a lead for Harris. She's trailing but needs to make up ground, especially in the Atlanta area.
Al Jazeera's reporter John Hendren is actually on the ground in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and he's painting a vivid picture of what's happening there. It sounds like it's a real microcosm of the larger election.
Exactly. Hendren's reporting is highlighting the tension and uncertainty we're seeing across the country. And he drew an interesting parallel to the 2020 election. Remember, it took 16 days for the final tally in Georgia back then, and Trump's efforts to overturn the results there are now the subject of those criminal charges he's facing. History definitely seems to be echoing in this election.
It's wild how those events from 2020 are still so relevant today. All right, so we've got Pennsylvania and Georgia on the edge, both absolutely crucial to the final outcome. What about Michigan? It was a key state in 2020, so I'm curious to see how it's playing out this time around.
Michigan is definitely one to watch. Right now, Trump is leaning there, but the Harris campaign is sending out a message of hope, highlighting the fact that votes from Detroit, specifically Wayne County, are still being counted.
Oh, that's right. Biden won Wayne County by a huge margin in 2020. Could this be a repeat scenario? It's possible. In 2020, Wayne County accounted for 860,000 votes, and Biden won it by 330,000. So even though Trump is currently ahead in Michigan, those uncounted votes from Wayne County could potentially swing the state back to Harris. It all comes down to how those votes break down.
So essentially, we've got three major battleground states, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan, all holding their breath. And the outcome in each one could completely change the trajectory of this election. This is intense. And it's not just the two main candidates making waves. Al Jazeera actually interviewed Green Party candidate Jill Stein at an event in Dearborn, Michigan.
That's right. Even though she's trailing significantly behind Harris and Trump, Stein is claiming a different kind of victory, focusing on the impact she believes she's having on the political conversation.
I'm curious to hear more about that. What exactly is she claiming?
Well, she believes her campaign has been successful in uniting people against what she calls attacks from the Democratic Party. She even sees the Democratic Party's efforts to counter her campaign as proof of her influence. Interesting. So she's framing her campaign as a force for change, even if she doesn't win the election itself. Did she have anything to say about the two main candidates?
She did. Stein had some strong words for Harris, claiming that Harris lost support from Arab Muslim young and progressive voters because of her stance on Israel. She went so far as to say that Harris preferred to lose this election than to actually stop the genocide in Gaza.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
It really highlights how even candidates who are unlikely to win can still shape the political discourse, especially on sensitive issues like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Absolutely. Stein's statements, whether you agree with them or not, bring attention to issues that might otherwise be overshadowed by the horse race aspect of the election.
It makes you think about the role of third-party candidates in a two-party system. Do they actually have a chance of winning, or is their main impact on shaping the conversation and pushing the major parties to address certain issues?
That's a great question, and one that political scientists have debated for years. Some argue that third-party candidates can act as spoilers, taking votes away from major party candidates and potentially swaying the outcome of an election. Others believe their main role is to raise awareness of specific issues and force the major parties to address them.
So, in a way, Stein's campaign, even if it doesn't lead to victory, could still have ripple effects on the political landscape.
Exactly. It's a reminder that every voice, every vote has the potential to make an impact, even in a system that often feels dominated by two major parties.
All right, so we've got a lot going on. A tight race, shifting demographics, key battleground states on the verge of tipping, and third-party candidates adding their voices to the mix. It's clear that this election is anything but predictable.
Right.
It really makes you realize how much is at stake in this election and how each vote truly can make a difference. So let's take a step back for a moment and look at the bigger picture. What are the major takeaways from everything we've learned from Al Jazeera's coverage so far?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's clear this election is incredibly close. We knew it would be tight, but the reality is even more dramatic than many predicted. And it really highlights just how divided the U.S. is right now.
Yeah, it feels like more than just a contest between two candidates.
Oh, for sure. It's a clash of ideologies.
Yeah.
And the outcome will have a huge impact on the country's future.
And speaking of those divisions, those demographic shifts we talked about earlier, it's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding why those shifts are happening. What does it tell us about the current political landscape?
Right. That's the big question, isn't it? The fact that Trump is gaining support among groups that traditionally lean Democrat suggests that there's some level of dissatisfaction or disillusionment with the status quo.
Yeah.
Perhaps some voters feel that the Democratic Party isn't addressing their concerns, or maybe they're drawn to Trump's message, regardless of their political affiliation.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue.
For sure. It makes you wonder what this election foreshadows about the future of U.S. politics. Are we seeing a realignment of sorts, or is this just a blip on the radar?
It's too early to say for sure. But this election is definitely a sign that the political landscape is shifting. We're seeing traditional voting patterns break down, and the rise of social media and the 24-hour news cycle are definitely playing a role in shaping public opinion.
Yeah.
This election could be a turning point, or it could be a continuation of trends we've been seeing for years. Only time will tell.
So to recap, we've got a nail-biting race with no clear winner yet. Key battleground states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan are still up in the air, and we're seeing some unexpected voter shifts that could reshape the political landscape. And let's not forget about the impact of third-party candidates like Jill Stein, who, though unlikely to win, are adding their voices to the mix and potentially influencing the outcome.
Absolutely, and it's important to remember that these are just early results, and things can change rapidly as more votes are counted. But what's clear is that this election is a reflection of just how complex and often unpredictable American politics can be.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that every vote matters and that we're all part of this unfolding story. So as you continue to watch those results come in, here's something to consider. In everything we've discussed, the unexpected shifts, the closeness of the race, what does this tell you about the current political climate and what might be driving these changes?
Yeah, that's something to think about regardless of the final outcome. This election isn't just about who wins the presidency. It's about understanding the forces shaping American society and what this election might foreshadow about the future of U.S. politics.
It's definitely a lot to think about. And as the night unfolds and more results come in, we'll be right here with you.